When I realized I started to avoid discussing death, I understood that I was truly getting old. In my youth, I was looked down upon for lacking social status. Back in those days, I used to hope I could be a little older so folks wouldn't treat me with such little respect. Now, I'm old enough. No one looks down on me for anything anymore. But now I look down on myself, because just from stepping out the door make me feeling so drained. I guess that's life. If you want to, you can always find the downside in everything. But, you know, after all these years, I've come to realize that focusing on the bad doesn't do much good. Life's like a marathon. No matter how tired you get, you've got to keep moving forward, maybe. In the end, all we can do is try to find a bit of peace amidst all the exhaustion and frustration. It's too fast, really too fast. And it's so unfair. Just when you finally understand how to live, and you be told there's not much time left. In the first few years of my 20s, love for me was still something that only existed in my imagination. In those imaginings, the way we met was always something out of the ordinary. Sometimes it was at a grand banquet. Sometimes it was when I was a successful businesswoman out there making business deals. In short, he was always someone no one would dare to look down upon. He was always drawn to me for all sorts of reasons. Maybe it was because of my elegant gown. Or perhaps the way I looked when I was focused on my work. In the end, he was always the one who pursued me. Usually, in moments like these, I would first gaze into his eyes to see if he was truly sincere. Then, I would accept his various invitations, doing all sorts of things together with him. The imagination always stopped at him proposing to me, and the two of us walking hand in hand into the halls of marriage. Those imaginations stayed with me for many years, especially at night. It wasn't until one day when I finally met one person in real life. I did meet my Aiden at a banquet, and he even looked quite close to how I had imagined. But unlike what I had imagined, for a long time after we met, he didn't show any interest in me at all. But the strange thing was, after I met him, it seemed like no matter what I did, he was always hovering around me. Yet, he never came close, and never once did he initiate a conversation with me. That bastard. Until one time, at another banquet, I met a very witty man. I don't remember what we talked about, but I do remember that we had a wonderful chatting that night. As soon as I got home and closed the door, I heard a frantic knocking from outside. For a brief moment, I even thought my door might come crashing down. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his face flushed and out of breath. For around 10 seconds, he didn't say even a single word. I don't know what came over me. I've always been a shy. But that day, when I saw the sad look on his face, I stepped forward and gave him a small peck on his lips. Then we just stood there, looking at each other, and suddenly we both burst into laughter. Even after we made it official, he was still the same, didn't talk much. It was always me chirping away in his ear. When I talked to him, it was hard to read his face. Sometimes, I'm even not sure if he is really listening. But the moment I started talking, he'd always stop whatever he was doing. So at first I thought I had found a block of wood. But as the days went by, all those little things I mentioned offhand started becoming realities in our life, one by one. Before I met him, I went through a long, hard stretch of time. So I know good things don't just happen out of nowhere. That's the kind of person he was. In his own way, expressed a romance that was uniquely his. Because of that, over all those years, there were few moments I found that I had fallen in love with him all over again. Day by day, I came to see his ordinariness. Yet, day by day, I loved him even more deeply. I was lucky, even though I waited many years. But the first person I met is the right one. But my friend Margaret wasn't so lucky. I don't remember if it was in the last few years of our 30s or the early years of our 40s. Anyway, one day, as we were having our afternoon tea, when we were talking about gossip as usual, she suddenly said,
"I think I've met someone special."
I understood what she meant in an instant, but by then, we were both already married. In our day, just hearing such words like that could make me feel dirty inside. My expression must have been something awful at that moment. I remember it clearly. After she said it, she glanced at me and was startled. I sternly told her that what she was thinking was wrong. I even said that if she did anything out of line, I would never be her friend again. And then, for many years, she never brought it up again, until the day she passed away. In that day, I sat by her bedside, one hand resting on her shoulder. We just looked at each other, not saying a single word. In the end, when the final moment arrived, just as she closed her eyes, I heard her softly said,
"I so regret."
Although I'm not sure if the two things were truly connected. Well, if I had the chance to go back to that day, I think I would give her a different answer. Even there's a price you must pay. But if you're sure this is that kind of love only happened once in a lifetime, then go for it. You must think I'm quite the hypocrite now. Well, no, I don't think that. I think it's just a belated kindness. At 45, Aidan and I had our first child. We had always taken precautions, but he still came. Although it's not the most appropriate thing to say, but during the pregnancy, I wished I would miscarry, because abortion wasn't allowed back then. Don't judge me. 45 is not young for a woman. I didn't have much confidence that I'd have the energy to properly take care of a child. But on the day he was born, the moment I laid eyes on him, an overwhelming rush of motherly love just swept over me. One moment, I was still cursing the pain he caused me during childbirth, and the next, I felt like I could give my life to protect him. When Aidan held Timmy, I saw him cry. It was one of the rare moments in my life when I saw such clear emotion on his face. And 2 years later, Danny came as well. It's funny, it turned out differently than I thought. Having children later in life actually has its benefits. First of all, since we didn't have to worry much about making a living, Aidan and I had plenty of time to spend with our children. Secondly, with age comes a bit of experience, and it helped me settle down. When the time came, I knew which path to guide them toward. Funny, isn't it? I was so against having children, but somehow, before I even realized it, they were all grown up. And they used to visit me often, but a few years ago, I told them not to come anymore. They have their own lives. I shouldn't, and don't want to interfere them. And when you get old, the biggest wish is not to live a life that's too exhausting anymore. I'd rather enjoy the peace of being alone than entertain them. Well, I guess that's it. I used to love the line from the movie The Hours, and now I finally understand what it means. I want to read it to you now. To look life in the face, always. To look life in the face. To know it for what it is. To love it for what it is. At last, to put it away. When the twilight of my life is ending, my soul has reached the dawn.